Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hope y'all having a great day. And with the college football season starting this Saturday, I figured I would do one last mock draft, at least pre-college football, um, to at least give my perspectives on who I think the top players are now, and then obviously we'll see at the end of the season where these at the end of the season where these players I thought, higher on or lower on end up going. So with no further ado, let us get into it. And the order of the draft is based off Super Bowl odds. So I did not, say the Cardinals had the number one pick and all that. So this is purely based off the Super Bowl odds entering this upcoming year and nothing else. So starting off with the Cardinals at number one, I mean, probably I feel like the most dysfunctional franchise just because they've been around for the longest. They've been around for the longest and they just have not had much success. Like there are other bad teams like the Jets, Browns, Raiders who are also mentioned in this top five, but the Cardinals I feel like are the worst. And if they do end up selecting a quarterback, which I think they will, because I don't think any of the QBs on their roster are anywhere close to being starter caliber. No offense to Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew, or Carson Vegas. Just those guys, in my opinion, are backups at best. So I think the Cardinals will go quarterback, and I'm going with my QB1 in Dante Moore. And I mean, imagine Dante Moore being able to throw to Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison, having Jeremiah Love in the backfield, Tyler Algier. It'll be a loaded offense if they somehow can figure out that offensive line that for some reason they didn't try to address in the draft, especially with their top pick. That offense could be really good under Mike LaFleur, and then hopefully that defense, which has a lot of talent, can show something this upcoming year. And who knows, maybe the Cardinals can find something in the future, but who knows? Moving on to the Dolphins at number two. Look, I understand if you say, well, if they finish with the second overall pick, they should sure go quarterback. But Miami has more issues than QB. I think Malik Willis will be fine this year. It's just Miami's roster is not very good, and there's not much talent outside of him and Devon Achane on that offense. So it'll be a tough sledding, which is why I think, regardless if Miami has a top pick, I think they should go best player available, and that is Jeremiah Smith, the number one player in this class, will be the number one player, I think, until, April. Like, he is a no doubt top player, a generational prospect, which people love to throw around that label, but he is truly a generational prospect. And imagine the Miami kid, because he is from Miami, comes home to play for the Dolphins, and they get Malik Willis, a legit top weapon, and Jeremiah Smith, and then hopefully they can start to figure out this offense and really be able to put things together in the next couple of years. So moving on to the Jets with the third overall pick. Do you think they'll be better this upcoming year than they have been, especially last year? But don't think they'll be that good, and think they'll be selecting a quarterback. Sorry, Gino. I mean, he might have a good year this year, but I don't think the Jets are one locked into him because I think he has 1 year left on his contract, and they need to find that franchise guy. They weren't able to do it this past year because Dante Moore decided to come back to school. So I think they go with my QB2, Arch Manning. All the hype last year, I think definitely people were down on him after a slow start, but did play well throughout the year. Like, played significantly better as the season went along, and especially late in the season. Like after that Georgia game, he was really bad, but that A and M game, he looked really good, and then in his bowl game against Michigan, he looked really good. So I think the sky's the limit. I think Arch and Dante are the top two clear cut quarterbacks, and then there's really a race for who will be the other top guys. And I think the Jets would hopefully be happy as another Manning would be coming to New York after his uncle Eli was a Giant. Moving on to the Browns, who, I mean, are probably going to be in need of a QB, but I don't know. Like, yes, I do like some of these quarterbacks. Um, I just don't know if you could really solidify, say, one of them is going to be this high. So I think the Browns, who do have a second pick because of the Myles Garrett trade, I think should just go best player available, and that'll be, I think, the second generational prospect in the class in Leonard Moore. And I know cornerback isn't a priority, nor does it usually go this high, but for a team like the Browns who need playmakers, you could go wide receiver, especially because they don't really have a true alpha wide receiver. We'll see how Casey Concepcion and Denzel Boston play their rookie years. But if you're the Browns, go best player available with your top pick, unless there's a QB when it comes to April who's available there. But Leonard Moore is a true generational cornerback. Like he's probably the best cornerback prospect since Jeff Okuda. I want to say in 2020. He might be even better, and you can go back to like Jalen Ramsey in 2016. He's been elite the last couple of years, like one of the best, just elite DBs in the country, and he's going to be going high. Which I know corner doesn't usually go that high because it's a less valued position, but when a guy like Leonard Moore, like certain positions, when there's just guys who are like that dominant, they're gonna go high regardless, just because of how talented they are. It doesn't matter about the position, and the Browns already locked up Denzel Ward. They already locked up, I think, Martin Emerson. I want to say so, or maybe it was Grant Delpit, but they've been able to um keep their guys, and they can help out this defense, which I still think is a really good unit, even though they don't have Myles Garrett. And Leonard Moore will just give this team another elite player. Moving on to fifth overall, the Raiders, have their quarterback, hopefully Fernando Mendoza, so not going to need one here. Could go a lot of different positions, could go receiver, offensive line. But I'm going to help out this defense, which is not very good. Outside of Max Crosby, they do have a lot of young pieces that they hope to be good, but outside of like maybe Jermon McCoy, we'll see if he even plays this upcoming year. There's not many players on that defense that are really that great. So I think they would go with Colin Simmons, who you could argue is a generational pass rusher, but he's just been dominant ever since he took the field in 2024 as a freshman. And I mean, will be incredible this upcoming year. Is a guy who, I mean, with how high edge rushers usually go, he could compete to go even higher. It's just Jeremiah Smith and Leonard Moore are generational prospects, in my opinion. And then Arch and Dante, I think, are the clear cut top QBs. So Colin Simmons might slide a little bit, but he's still an amazing pass rusher and would give this Raiders defense, another pass rusher. You can play him alongside Max Crosby, or if Crosby does get traded, you could um move him to, like, you could have him be the replacement, and Simmons is a amazing player. Moving on to the Falcons, definitely could go QB here, and I wouldn't be opposed to it because I don't think either Tua or Michael Penix is the long-term QB option. I think both will disappoint this year in Atlanta. Will more than likely be picking high, and there could be a QB to select, but for right now, I'm not going to try to reach for a quarterback. I'm gonna go with a player that, definitely would go this high right now. And I'm gonna go with it's a toss up. I think you could go with one of the tackles, but I'm gonna go David Stone out of Oklahoma. A beast. Um, his first two seasons at Oklahoma on a really talented Oklahoma defense that has just been great, phenomenal under Brent Venables, and a guy who is one of those, another elite prospect, potentially generational, because defensive tackles, it's kind of hard for them to go this high. We have seen guys like Mason Graham and Jalen Carter in recent years, and I think Stone is on that caliber. And a Falcons team that very much has revamped their defense to make it better, they can just continue that. And, maybe they're able to land a QB. Um, maybe they sign somebody, like we've seen the last couple of years where like got like a journeyman or not a journeyman, but like a former high pick gets moved on from, the team can bring him in and maybe he's having success, or maybe they, trade for somebody, or they could draft somebody later on. And I think they could use this top pick to address a bigger need to help out this team. Moving on to the Titans at seventh. You know, I think Robert Saleh would actually, like that Dylan Stewart is still on the board, an elite prospect. Him and Colin Simmons, I feel like, are just two dominant players that like you just would not want to face. Dylan Stewart, I think, is like 6'5", 270 or something like that. Like he is just a freak of nature, and I think Robert Sala would, be glad that he fell to seventh, because he would be like, yeah, I can get another dominant edge. They drafted Keldrick Falk, this past year in the first round after trading back up. Falk's more of a developmental guy, and Stewart is too, because he's not fully, um, a surefire pick, but he's more of a guaranteed guy, and I think Robert Saleh would be happy to see a guy like Dylan Stewart fall in his lap. Moving on to eighth overall with the Panthers, could go a lot of different directions. Um, depending on how Bryce Young plays, QB could be an option. Um, depending on, maybe they go receiver just to get another weapon, but I'm actually going to go with a um interesting pick. I'm gonna go with Trevor Gooseby, the tackle out of Texas, which you might be like, what? Why would they go tackle? But Ike Ekwonu more than likely is not going to be on this team next year. I mean, he more than likely is not going to play this upcoming year after tearing his ACL, I think, in the wild card game against the Rams. And it's usually at least a year plus when you recover. And he has 1 year left on his deal. They signed Rasheed Walker on a 1 year deal. Taylor Moton was just diagnosed with a blood clot, and who knows if he plays this upcoming year. And he also has not that much left on his contract. So it's like they did draft Monroe Freeling to hopefully be one of the future tackles on this team, but the other tackle spot is, unknown right now. And I don't think the Panthers will be picking this high, although who knows. Um, but I think they definitely could go tackle, and they have Freeling, whether he's on the left or right side, and then they could have Gooseby on the other side. Even though Gooseby did just he is going to have surgery on his leg after he had an MRI, so that might push him down, if he does miss a ton of time, but I still think a really talented tackle that could be the top tackle off the board, and the Panthers team that definitely, are heading in the right direction. Helping out your young quarterback, giving him protection is never a bad idea. Moving to the Saints, who I think defense should be a priority. went a lot of offense this past off season to help out Tyler Shuck, who I think will be really good, and we'll have the Saints team competing for the South title. So I think defense is a priority because this defense is not that great, and we'll see if Brandon Staley year two can maybe have this defense playing better. But I think they should go with Ellis Robinson out of Georgia, an outstanding corner since he got there as a freshman. Did have some, did have some not great performances early on this past, 2025 season, but did start to um get really, much better as the season went along. And a Saints team that has lost a lot of corners, Paulson Adebo and to the Giants, now Alante Taylor to the Titans. They do have Kool-Aid McKinstry, who's been really good, but still need to help out that secondary, and Ellis Robinson would be an amazing pick for New Orleans. Moving on to the Giants at 10th overall. Don't need to go, I think, receiver or tackle. I mean, you could go receiver. They have Malik Neighbors. They are going, who knows who wide receiver two is, but I feel like they're kind of set at offensive line for the most part. So defense um could be a priority. Running back, which this is a really good running back class, but I don't think they need to go running back, especially when you have Cam Scatterboo, Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary. Like they have so many running backs on this team that I don't even need that position. Um, but you know what? I'm gonna go defensive tackle with Amari Washington, who could have been potentially, I don't want to say for sure first round pick, but could have been a really high pick if he had entered this past year. Oregon has a lot of guys who could have been high draft picks in 2026 that decided to come back. And I think Amari Washington could be um, one of those guys who boosts his stock. Obviously the Giants traded away Dexter Lawrence, so going to need to fill that hole at defensive tackle. John Harbaugh knows about great defensive lines with his time with the Ravens, and he could definitely use that first round pick to address that defensive line, which is great off the edge, but is a little iffy in the interior. Remember the Commanders at 11th, um, you know, was a really good offseason for the defense. They did improve the offense, bringing in Chigga Stephon Diggs recently, so definitely are improving, but definitely could use another guy on the outside. Could use offensive line help, especially with the injuries they've had. Laramie Tunsil's going to miss some time. So I do think it could come down to one of these two. It could also be, defensive wise, but I'm going to go Cam Coleman, which might seem crazy, but look, Terry McLaurin, one of the best receivers. I know he had a down year, but I think that was mainly due to Washington having a down year and McLaurin missing a lot of training camp, wanting that extension. So, but he's not getting any younger. Stephon Diggs is only on a 1 year deal. They do need to, give Jaden Daniels more help. And Cam Coleman, who, really talented. 2 years at Auburn where he was just amazing despite bad QB play. I think this year with Arch, he's going to be phenomenal. And I think, Washington definitely can help out Jaden by giving him another weapon on the outside for the foreseeable future. Because, Jaden only entering year three, Terry McLaurin isn't going to be there for, his entire career. You're going to have to bring in more weapons. And Cam Coleman definitely could be that pick. Moving on to the Jets, this is their second pick. Not entirely sure whether this would be the Colts or the Cowboys or the Packers, because in that Cowboys trade it was the worst of Green Bay or Dallas. Um, but obviously already went with Arch Manning at third overall, so don't need a quarterback. So definitely can address other needs. And I think looking at the board, there are a lot of talented players. Wide receiver definitely could be an option. Because you have Garrett Wilson. They did draft Omar Cooper Jr. last year, or this past season, I should say this past draft. They have Sadiq and Mason Taylor, so clearly, addressing the offense. So defense seems to be the priority, and I would say I would go with KJ Bolden, the second Georgia DB to come off after Ellis Robinson, and they did bring in Minka Fitzpatrick as a veteran in that secondary, but definitely going to need to bring in younger, more impactful players for this future. Who knows if Aaron Glenn will be the coach come April when the team will be drafting, but they definitely will be needing to improve this defense. And KJ Bolden, a amazing player. Him and Ellis Robinson early on in 2025 definitely struggles, but improved a lot and will continue to be great. I mean, Georgia's known for having great defenders, and this year's class is not is going to be just the same. So moving on to the Vikings at 13, which this would mean that the Vikings would have a disappointing season. Um, but could go quarterback, depending on if Kyler Murray works out or not. Um, but I'm gonna go with. I feel like Minnesota. They do have weaknesses, but I don't know who you'd really go with. I mean, you could go Jordan Seaton just because both Brian O'Neill and Christian Darrisaw have had injury concerns the last couple of years. So if you want to just, bring in a guy who, like the Giants did with Francis Mauigoa, you could put him at guard, and then if a tackle gets injured, you could then, plug him into tackle, and they would be fine. Um, could go, defense. This is a tough one. I am going. I think I'm going to go with Tate Johnson, the safety out of Notre Dame. Really talented player, and Minnesota. Harrison Smith, released from the team, so no longer having Hitman Harrison, the Hitman, on the team. So definitely going to have to um help out that defense, which is amazing. But still need really talented players on there, and Tate Johnson, especially that secondary, which doesn't have a lot of great talent. It's just a lot of guys that have fit the Flores scheme, and I think Tate Johnson could elevate that secondary to much higher levels. What are the Steelers at 14? Another QB option, but not really, you know, like I don't really know who the third quarterback would be, and also I just don't know, you know, at least of now, how many QBs would really go that high. So then we're gonna pivot to a different position. You know, a lot of talented players on here. I mean, could go um with a lot of possession. I'm not really entirely sure what the Steelers or who the Steelers should go with. Um, but I think I'm gonna have them go with a tough decision. I mean, I feel like the defensive side of the ball would be a good pick, and I'm gonna go Justin Scott, the interior. Yeah, I know they've drafted a lot of guys on that D line in recent years, so you definitely could say, oh, they should just, you know, go with a different position. But Cam Hayward, how much longer is he gonna play? I know Derek Harmon might take a step in year two, but still need to help out that defense. And Justin Scott seems like the right pick for the Steelers. Under the Jets at 15, obviously went Arch at third, went KJ Bolden at 12. So now at 15, their third first round pick, which it's crazy to say a team has three first round picks because usually in the NFL, teams like maybe have two, but three I feel like is crazy. Um, could go a lot of different positions. I'm gonna stay on the defensive side and go with Quincy Rhodes out of Arkansas. Was a phenomenal defender despite being on a really bad defense. I think it'll be more of the same this upcoming year, being a really bad defense, but Rhodes should be really good. The Jets moved on from, their top edge rushers. Will McDonald still there, but who knows his future? They did draft David Bailey, but you need more than just one pass rusher off the edge, and Quincy Rhodes, who was an SEC All American, or, or he was a SEC first team or second team. I'm not entirely sure. I forget, but he was, awarded despite being on a really bad Arkansas defense, and should be a once again productive player for a Jets for an Arkansas team, and the Jets could scoop him up in the middle of the first round. But the Bears at 16, definitely could go defense. Um, Especially, given the fact that that defense last year very much reliant on turnovers and, definitely do need to improve. But I do think the defense will improve. Like, I think the additions of Dylan Thieneman, Devin Bush, um, should help this team out and be able to give this defense, more of an identity. So I think, you could pivot to like offensive line, because that offensive line is good but could be improved. I think I'm gonna go Jordan Seaton. I think the fall's been a little too much. Chicago has Darnell Wright, who they paid a big contract to earlier this offseason. Brought in Joe Tooney and Jonah Jackson. So, like, they clearly prioritize offensive line, and that left tackle spot has kind of been, left open. Like, they hope Braxton Jones would be able to do it. He wasn't, that great. I definitely think Jordan Seaton, who could end up being the best tackle if Trevor Gooseby misses a lot of the season. But for right now, Seaton's my number two tackle, and I think the Bears could scoop him up at 16 and, kind of perfect this offensive line, especially if Logan Jones is the future center. They could have a really good group up front for this team, at least for the next couple of years. Because Joe Tooney is getting up there in age, so who knows how much longer he would play, but they would still have a couple of really young guys in Wright, Logan Jones, and Jordan Seaton to propel this offensive line for years to come. Moving on to the Bengals at 17. Um, very interesting draft board. Don't think they would go offense. I think that's covered. Unless you want to go like guard, which could be a possibility. Um, but I think I'm gonna go defense. Do need a linebacker, and there are some really talented linebackers, but I think um I think um overall there are really talented defenders, and I think they go helping out this. Yeah, they are going to help out the secondary going OJ Frederick from Miami, one of the best young corners last year, and Bengals team that clearly is prioritizing helping this defense out this past year. I definitely do think that they are going to um, continue to improve this defense. I think it will be improved this upcoming year, and I think they could once again address it with the first round pick to continue to help Burrow chasing this offense out that definitely needs the help. Um, Moving on to the Jags um, at 18. This is the Jags at 18. Really good team. Do think they will regress this upcoming year, but should be still really good. Do have some holes on this roster they could improve in. And I think um I think I'd have them go. I mean, you could go wide receiver depending on if BTJ um helps out. I'm gonna go with my first running back. I'm gonna go Jaden Ball out of Florida, which I know, Bashal Tune, the Jags hope will be that guy, but you can just be, safe, certified, knowing that you'll get a really talented running back in Jaden Ball. On a Florida team, I think will be improved this upcoming year, and I think Ball will be a big part of that. And the Jags could scoop him up at 18 and give this offense a boost like they had with Travis Etienne this past year. They could get that boost of a running game to help them out. Moving on to the Bucks at 19. I don't think Tampa Bay is going to finish this low. I think they could finish higher. Um, and it could be a disaster season, but they are picking at 19 in this mock draft, so I think I'm gonna have them go. Yeah, them go. Um, hmm, um, I am gonna have them go with Omarion Miller, wide receiver out of Arizona State, transfer from Colorado, just like Jordan Tyson was. So maybe that would be back-to-back ASU receivers in the first round for the first time since N'Keal Harry and Brandon Ayuk went in back-to-back first rounds. Hopefully Tyson and Miller work out as players um, more, but Tampa, they have a Mecca Buko. Definitely could go tight end. K was brought back, but a lot of teams do use two tight end systems, but Chris Godwin isn't going to be there for that long. I know they have Tez Johnson, a lot of other guys, but definitely could improve that receiver room. And Omarion Miller definitely could help them out. But the Broncos at 20th, um, the I don't know, Denver, really talented defense. Like, there's not many holes on this roster, but I think one big one is tight end. I'm gonna go with Jamari Johnson out of Oregon, which would this would be the second consecutive Oregon tight end after Sadiq went last year. And they've kind of needed a tight end. Like, since Bo Nix got there, they've kind of just relied on decent but not great tight ends. A lot of people thought in 2025, Colston Loveland could have been available when they were picking. They could have selected him. He wasn't. 2026, obviously they traded that pick away, so but a lot of people were mocking them Sadiq. So I do think they definitely could go tight end and help out this offense, giving it another weapon for Bo Nix. Could go running back as well, depending on if RJ Harvey or Jonah Coleman don't play as well. They could definitely go running back. Texans could go offensive line. Definitely could go offensive line with tackle or guard. Um, but I'm gonna go with running back with um Keywan Lacey out of Ole Miss. Yes, they brought in David Montgomery, who will be the primary back at least the next couple of years. But they need that future back for this offense. They could go receiver because Jalen Noel got injured once again, so definitely could go receiver with like Charlie Becker. But I think they would go running back. Winnie Marks is fine, but they need a guy who could eventually take over for David Montgomery and the Texans in a 2027 draft where the running back class will be better. They can finally address that running back that they've sorely needed since drafting CJ Stroud. But are the Eagles at 22? Um, who knows? Maybe this could be a QB spot depending on how Jalen Hurts plays because I think his contract's up after 2027, but this upcoming year is the final year of guaranteed money for Hurts. So definitely could be an interesting one. But I think I'm gonna have them go. I'm gonna go Austin Cervelde from Ohio State. There's been a lot of rumors about Lane Johnson retiring, Landon Dickerson retiring. So who knows after this upcoming year if both or at least one leaves. We know Jeff Stoutland's no longer there. So how does this offensive line look? Um, Especially guys they try to draft and hope to be future starters on this team. They could address that offensive line and keep bringing in guys to protect Hurts or whoever the quarterback is of the future. To the Lions at 23rd. Could go a lot of different positions here. Could go offensive line because, they do have the tackle secured, but the interior is not that great. So they definitely could prioritize that interior offensive line. I think I'm going to have them go defense with I'd go with Kenyatta Jackson Jr. out of Ohio State, back-to-back Buckeyes. They've kind of needed that secondary pass rusher since they drafted Aiden Hutchinson. They've kind of not really prioritized it, and I think the Lions are going to need more pass rush help. Like they've drafted interior guys to hopefully get pressure that way, but you still need to get pressure off the edge. And Kenyatta Jackson, one of the best guys off the edge, and would give this Lions team a really talented um guy alongside Aiden Hutchinson. We're on the Chargers at 24th. It was actually just revealed Tyler Biotis will miss the entire season. So another injury on the offensive line for a Chargers team that was hoping to have a healthier, better offensive line this upcoming year. I do think they should prioritize offensive line play. Could go receiver. Um, just because Ladd's fine, but Quinn Johnson, final year of his deal. Um, Keenan Allen no longer there, so they are, they do have Trey Harris, but I think they could go receiver. Um, but I think you go with offensive line, and I said Biotis got injured. They need a future center. I'm gonna go with Cade Piper out of Iowa. You know, they've drafted the tackles of the future, hopefully, in Rashawn Slater and Joel. Now they need to prioritize the interior offensive line, and Piper would be a start for them. We're on to the Patriots at 25th. Um, you know, really improved a lot of this roster from 2025. So not many weaknesses, but definitely could um have some players help out. I think defense would be the priority, and looking at the positions available, I mean, none of these are really positions New England needs, but I do think they go linebacker. I think Sammy Brown is the best one and could be a first round pick. They have, Robert Spillane and I forget who else at the linebacker spot, but definitely could improve and give Mike Vrabel, maybe the new Mike Vrabel on this Patriots defense. One of the Niners at 26. I think receivers got to be in play, and I'm going to go Charlie Becker. Like, this receiver room is not that great. I mean, this definitely could be a quarterback. Like, I know Purdy only signed this deal last year, but definitely could be a QB if Purdy has another bad season and the Niners, need to find that guy who can be, solidifier for this team. But definitely, um, do need help at that wide receiver position. Becker coming from Indiana, not the only Indiana receiver who could be drafted in round one because there is Nick Marsh, the Michigan State transfer, but San Fran Ricky Pearsall out for the year again. Did bring back Debo Samuel, but I don't think it's going to be that great. They need to prioritize wide receiver, help win this team out, and I think they can do it once again. Cowboys, I believe this would be the pick from the Packers, meaning Dallas's first round pick would have gone to the Jets. As one of their three first round picks in the top 15. Dallas here definitely could go Mario Craver, depending on if Pickens um isn't there anymore. But defense definitely is like a bigger priority. And I think they'd go with I think they go corner. They got Caleb Downs could, you know, help out that secondary with corner play. I'm gonna go Kelly Jones out of Mississippi State. Really good player, and Dallas needing to help out that secondary. Deron Bland's still there, but he's been banged up, and who knows, if he would, still be there, especially after they moved on from Trayvon Diggs. Um, and they have running guys like Siobhan Revel in recent years, but still need to help out that secondary. And Jones definitely could be a priority. Definitely could be a nice pick late in the first round. Chiefs at 28. Um, Once again, picking down in the 20s like the Chiefs are known to be picking. Could go corner. Yeah, I know they went Delane, but definitely could, go corner again. I think they should go with wide receiver Mario Craver out of A&M. Rasheed Rice, final year of his deal is coming up, so you know more than likely they're not going to bring him back. Xavier Worthy's been disappointing as a first round pick. They need to, prioritize helping out Mahomes. They finally did it with a running back, bringing Kenneth Walker. The offensive line should be better um, this upcoming year, so you got to bring out more weapons, especially if this is Travis Kelce's last year. If he retires, they lose Rice because they don't want to bring him back. They're going to need more weapons on the outside for Mahomes. And Craver could be a phenomenal pick for the Chiefs late in the first round. Now the Ravens at 29th. Um, could go, a lot of interesting picks here. Could go D tackle, depending on if Nomni Madubuike, um, you know, if he does come back, how does he look? Could go offensive line, just because they do have a really solid offensive line, but definitely could be improved. But I think running back could be in play. Not saying Derrick Henry's gonna retire, but with how loaded the running back draft is, they definitely could, pick Henry's eventual successor here. But I think they should go defense. Um, could go with a lot of different positions. I think they should go linebacker here. And it's a really talented linebacker class, but I think they go with um Whit Weeks out of LSU. They have Roquan Smith, and while he's really good, and should be better this upcoming year, they still need another guy. I know they have Teddy Buchanan, and as a Ravens fan, I'm a huge Teddy Buchanan fan, but is coming off a major injury. Trent Simpson, if he doesn't step up, and maybe Buchanan doesn't look the same post injury, they're gonna need a linebacker. And hey, it was a similar pick. They got another LSU linebacker, in Patrick Queen. Maybe Weeks can work out, unlike how Queen did for most of his career. Moving on to the Seahawks, um, at 30th. Not many weaknesses because teams down here don't have many weaknesses, so it's kind of just picking whoever. I think they. I mean, I think I should just go defensive line. I'm gonna go I'm gonna go Modmo out of Miami. They do have, you know, a lot of great defensive linemen, but it's never bad to have enough. Could go corner. But I'm gonna go on bottom row, give him another interior guy for this defense. Bills at 31st. I think the Bills are gonna be the runner-ups. We'll see. Um, I think defense definitely is a pick they do need, and I'm gonna go Will Eccles. You know, Ed Oliver, great defensive tackle, but they don't have much outside of him on that defensive line, especially in the interior. They have brought in guys, but they never really worked out. And Will Eccles, probably could be a step in the right direction for a defense that needs to improve if they want to make the Super Bowl. And then finally, the Browns went Leonard Moore at fourth, 32nd. Why not? I'm gonna go quarterback. I'm gonna go CJ Carr. I'm really high on CJ Carr, and yeah, that'll do it for my way too early 2024 um pick mock draft. As you can see, these are how Pro Football Network graded all my picks. Mostly good. A couple D's at the end because I, according to them, reached for those picks. But tell me, what you guys think of the draft or this upcoming draft. Let me know what you guys thought of my picks for your team. Let me know down in the comments who you guys would have selected. And, hope you guys have a great day. It's fun to make mock drafts and kind of see where some of these teams could be looking in the future. So, yeah, hope you guys like it. Check me out on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Get my latest news um, around the NFL and college football. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And until next time, hope you guys have a great day. And I'll see you guys in my next video. But until then, hope you have a great day and bye.